Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to another 21st Century Renaissance and another open interest news at a breakdown on GameStop. I'm your host, Dr. Mike LoPiano, and we are back in the thick of it here with GameStop, doing GameStop things. We're going to talk about some of those GameStop things today, but we're also going to turn our attention over to the beginning of this story of Abram and our continuing of the reading of the book of Genesis. So that's coming up today. We will go ahead and get started with that reading from the book of Genesis. So you recall, right, yesterday we were introduced to the lineage of Abram, who will become Abraham, who really is sort of the central figure of this maybe second act, we can call it. Well, maybe a third act, but really this sort of this important figure at the center, about a third of the way into the book of Genesis, is the accounts of Abraham, and of his story, which is really quite the adventure to behold. We were introduced to his ancestry and to the circumstances, right, to Abraham, to Lot, to their origin in Babylon, Ur of the Chaldees, and so we have here really the beginning of Abraham's journey, that is, which begins when he's 75 years old. So let's take a look at this in deeper detail. Now the Lord had said unto Abram, get thee out of thy country, and from thy kindred, and from thy father's house, unto a land that I will show thee. And I will make of thee a great nation, and I will bless thee, and make thy name great. Thou shalt be a blessing. And I will bless them that bless thee, and curse him that curseth thee. And in thee shall all families of the earth be blessed. So Abram departed, as the Lord had spoken unto him, and Lot went with him. And Abram was 75 years old when he departed out of Haran. And Abram took Sarai, his wife, and Lot, his brother's son, and all their substance that they had gathered, and the souls that they had gotten in Haran. And they went forth to go into the land of Canaan, and unto the land of Canaan they came. And Abram passed through the land unto the place of Sichem, unto the plain of Moreh. And a Canaanite was then in the land. And the Lord appeared unto Abram and said, unto thy seed will I give this land. And there builded he an altar unto the Lord, who appeared unto him. And he removed from thence unto a mountain on the east of Bethel, and pitched his tent, having Bethel on the west, and Hai on the east. And there he builded an altar unto the Lord, and called upon the name of the Lord. Abraham journeyed, going on still toward the south. So this is the beginning of the story of Abraham. Very interesting, right? He's 75 years old. When he hears this call, right? Very often these stories will begin with a call from God. This is a very important thing. Usually it's within the Catholic lexicon, it is usually referred to as vocation. And we know the word vocation is like, what's going to be your job? Like, what are you going to do? Like, there's that. But of course, vocation really is something more than that, right? It comes from this Latin term vocation, meaning calling, right? Vocare, from vox, meaning voice. So what are you going to do? But not just what are you going to do in the job sense, but what does God call you to bring into being on the earth? How does God call you to further the cause of creation? To further the cause of life, right? To play a part in this story of creation, let's say. And right, so he's 75. Meanwhile, right, this is an interesting thing I noticed too, right? His father was 70 when he gave birth to Abram. Abram is 75 and he is childless, and his wife is barren. But they're called to go out from the land of Haran, which his father had left. Right, his father had originally dwelt in the land of Ur of the Chaldees, and he had gone out to the land of Haran. So he's living in this sort of community that his father has built in Haran with his immediate family. So he takes I think it's also the name. I think it's also Lot's father. So it's like the portion of the land west of Ur of the Chaldees which is right. It's not actually even his father's land, right? It's his uncle's land. Interesting. Or no, it's his brother's land. Very interesting. It's his brother's land, which I suppose his father had left to him. Haran is dead at this point, so Abram is looking over it because Haran is dead. And so he is called to go forth into the land of Canaan, and he receives a vision that it will be given to his seed, even though he has no children. He's 75, so it's not impossible for him. But really the problem is that his wife is barren. It's not so much that he is old. I mean, they are older. But his father had children at 70 and lived until 205. So, it's not so much out of the question for him, but the real issue is his wife is barren. And what's interesting too is we also have the reintroduction, let's say, of this sort of, well, it's a little bit clear here, but it's a mountain, and then receiving of a vision here, right? Building an altar, this sort of thing, and right, he's on a mountain east of Bethel. What is Bethel? Bethel means the house of the Lord, Bethel. So I don't know who names this place. It may be this sort of posthumous naming thing, but there is an idea, right? This is a place where the Lord dwells. So there are indwelling places on earth, special places where folks receive vision, right? The patriarchs receive visions. In fact, I think a lot of the naming has to do, and we will see this as we go on, right? There are important episodes, let's say, from the lives of the patriarchs that end up seeing places receive their name. So in fact, right, this place may have its name as a result of Abraham having this vision there, although it doesn't tell us that right now. So, okay. So what do we see here, right? Part of this is something like what we see in The Hobbit, right? And in fact, this is in The Hobbit and the Fellowship of the Ring. I mean, these are a little bit more recent stories, so they can be a little bit more tangible to us, something like that. Really, they're in those stories because they're in this, right? Where the adventures in the lives of Bilbo and Frodo happen when I think they're 50. They're 50, right? We see in the movie they're all like childlike and energetic and like, oh, little people, but in the books they're 50, so they're middle-aged dudes. They're not even middle-aged; they're kind of over the hill dudes. And that's certainly the impression that we get here from Abraham, right? Or Abram still at this point. He hasn't done absolutely, he's 75. He hasn't done anything in his life. He is caretaker of his brother's land. And like ward, like he has his like nephew is his ward, and he has a barren wife, and he hasn't done anything. But even this late in life, he receives a calling from God. And it says, go, I will bless all these people. You will inherit this whole land. I will make of thee a great nation. 75. I will make of thee a great nation. So he gets this vision. He gets this big vision. He gets a vision of growth. He gets a vision of increase. He gets a vision of creation. So I guess if there is something to extract from this, it's, part of what this is trying to say is there is no age, right? There is no point in life, no matter how you have lived your life. There is no point in your life when you cannot receive the vision of creation. Abram is 75 when he receives the creative vision, the vision of how he can contribute to the story of creation. So there is no age. It does not matter. It does not matter if you are 15, if you are 20, if you are 30, if you are 40, if you are 50, if you are 75, if you are over the hill, if you are looking, if you have lived a life, if you have had a job, if you are married, if you don't have kids, whatever it is, wherever you find yourself, it is still possible for you to receive this vision of creation, to become a part of the story of creation, even if you have not so much up to that point in your life. So something to think about for today as we continue on with our reading of the life of Abram and of the book of Genesis. We'll turn our attention now over to GameStop. Yeah. And, having some fun, just looking at some ultra lows, which, yeah, as we'll take a look at, I think may have some relationship to what's going on with Bitcoin right now, but more than we might expect. Today's gratitude goes out, first and foremost, once again to Dude McStud, who really sponsored a whole heck of a lot of these in a row. So thank you, Dude McStud, for sponsoring today's article and video breakdown, as well as to our monthly supporters, Not Medical Advice, Kurt Losko, Cosmotropic, Dave Spike 52, Cameron DeLeon, Drew Krantz, and Faithless Litter. This was really, continuing to look at this type of price action, seeing us dip below 22, head down into the upper 21s pre-market here. What's going on? Isn't this going below cash floor? I mean, yeah, right. I mean, fundamentally, we can say this even from this more conservative valuation model right now. GameStop is officially undervalued. Like a lot of people say, there's the whole growth model way of valuing things, and there are a lot of ways to look at how to do evaluation. But even in this very, very conservative retail version of evaluating what GameStop is and how it's valued, it is undervalued. It is even under this very conservative, really fair, I would say. Morningstar fair market value is $23.50, and that's going all the way back to Q4 of last year. The Q4 report of last year in March. That's when we got our Morningstar fair value of $23.50. And then, we ran to 37. So something special there. But now we see ourselves, right, more or less at the end of Q2, we kind of saw 2x cash flow somewhere around 2262, 2263, or 23, somewhere in the 2260s. I forget exactly, it was based on kind of round estimates but in the 2260s somewhere. And here we are in the upper 21s. Now, Bitcoin is trading down. It's at 103 right by the time I took the screenshot. That was the case. What are we looking at right now? BTC USD is covered a little bit, 104-ish. So yeah, around here. That should pull us down a bit, but close to $1 off the cash floor. $1, like not that much, right? Being down, I think we were at like 116,000 at the end of Q2, and so I think that's something like 12 or 13% down from the valuation at the end of Q2, like a month and a half ago. Shouldn't be that much. It doesn't explain that. What I did kind of take a look at, or what I did sort of think about, was like, if we're looking at something like this, does look in some ways kind of this really just straight, surprise how low this is going, way down. If we bump over to our GME chart here, we kind of look in some ways, we go way, way out. I look back to 2023 to try to get like some insight. Like, are we doing 2023 things? Do we have, because, right, we looked at, for example, Ultimator's bottom finder here, which actually it's as high its value since before the sneeze. But the one just prior to that is a 2023 value, January 2023. So, I mean, I was thinking in the 2023 realm here. One thing that I did notice is we do have a pretty substantial delay on our FTD data. 4 days, it's not crazy. It is the greatest delay we've had in the past 4 years for any half-month FTD data since October 23. Actually, the first half of October 23. We did not get the first half data, which would have been stuff from in here, right? So from October 2nd to October 15th, something like that. Yeah, October 13th would have been, I think, this range. So we didn't get any FTD data from here, and then we got it published only, on this Tuesday before we went on this run here. So this was a run from almost down to $12, all the way up to almost 19, so 18 and a half. Big run, big move coming off Q3 earnings report here, going into the Q3 earnings report, and then continuing after it. A lot of volatility in there, and then of course we had our this kind of rundown into May here. So I don't know. Do we see something like this? Do we see something like this again? Do we just see this extended, this like surprise extended move down? Right. See, when did we top here? Let's see, earnings in 2023, Q2 earnings, September 6th. So yeah, if you look, that's when we peaked. So we had this like up move in May, June. Very, and look, remember we were talking about this back then, right? So we had a little bit of March excitement, and then we went down, and then we came back up, and we peaked in June, about mid-June. The peak of this was 28th of May. So this peaked a little bit early. But if you want to consider the underlying trend, when did this peak? June 10th. All right, and it peaked around earnings. Yeah, so it peaked around earnings. So earnings peak and then a long rundown. So our peak here was just before earnings this year, and then essentially long rundown. I mean, with this kind of interlude, long rundown, a little bit of interlude around Q2 earnings, right? Not as big. And of course, GME was still wildly overvalued versus where we were trading even back here. Not so much here, right? We're not, I would say we are undervalued now. We're not wildly overvalued. But maybe we're doing this kind of big extended rundown. And if we look at this, right, okay, we have this little Oklahoma pattern where we did the offering. So like, would we have just kind of traded down along this? Because we're still kind of following this downward trajectory here, by and large. We've just resumed it. So, I mean, what's possible, I guess, do we go now into even like November OPEX? Do we not get the big move up? Do we not get, do we kind of just go kind of flat to slightly down here, a little bit of recovery and then just kind of go flattish? PMO wise, we're not looking awesome. PMO, we're still trending down, right? We're not looking awesome PMO wise. So it doesn't look like we're about, from the PMO perspective, it doesn't look like we're about to, bounce up hard here. We probably won't look like that until we get a little bit of movement, I think. And then once the crosses happen, I mean, it can really happen. As soon as we get some volume, it can cross, and then it'll look like we're about to go back to the upside. So I don't want to be too presumptive with that. But maybe we get something that looks a little bit more like our 2023 archetype here. If we're dealing with kind of 5-year and maybe like 2-year swaps that are kind of stacked on top of each other in this area, because like what is keeping us so far down here? What is causing us to trade down into below intrinsic value of the stock? If it isn't swaps, right? If the answer isn't swaps, I don't know what it is. Unless someone really, really wants to accumulate cheaply here, something like that before it lets fly. And then we get a little bit of this. And then Q4 is just lights out and we yoink back up here, something like that. Could be. Don't want to over speculate. We're still very close to that 500-day, 100-week moving average if we bump out to the weekly. It's the same line. It's the same average. Right. Keeping an eye on the weekly RSI like we did yesterday here. Yeah, that's wildly oversold. Ooh, there was a weekly signal there back in. That's interesting. In November 2023, there was a weekly bottom finder alert. Very curious. This is the first time, actually August. That's very weird. August was the first time we had what bottom finder go on? Yeah, 25th of August. First time we had a weekly bottom finder trigger since that November 2023 run. Huh. Very curious. Very curious. Didn't show up later here. Weekly PMO looking bad. Looking bad. We didn't actually, this move here for earnings, we didn't even we didn't even cross back up on the weekly PMO. So we wait, right? We can take a look at our options data. Right, here's our FTD, our missing FTD data. Not crazy, but still waiting. Bearish around the 23, so 23.50. Short 23. Long stuff at 23. Interestingly, it's a lot of OI at that $23 position. That is a very large call wall. It is still not our overall call wall, which is at 25, just because we have so much OI at 25 going into November OPEX. But a whole heck of a lot this week at 23, interestingly. Max Payne still at 23, if I'm not mistaken, for this week. Maybe some of this weakness in Bitcoin more or less encouraged institutions to go ahead and try and push us down here. I would say, like from a GEX perspective, any sort of action, anything to kind of try to really push us down here, I think bounces back up pretty quickly. I do think we see some recovery back up into this maybe just sub 23 area, at the very least, some recovery into that area going into the end of the week. Look, anything is possible, but I would say that the deeper they push this, down, kind of, if we see it move down quickly, it can come back up also reasonably quickly. That the increased volatility down here, let's say, moving through this put dominant position, means it can go back up just as quickly. Also independent of the things that GME usually does as far as just teleporting in price randomly up, right? So, at the end of the day, a lot of this is just really waiting for that to happen. So more patience, not getting, personally, I'm not getting too crazy hype. Happy to be surprised, but keeping things conservative. Also, just kind of trying to roll with the punches here in terms of in terms of now moving down below the 2x cash floor, which I don't think anybody had on their bingo card for this week. I haven't seen a single person. So, in any case, thanks very much as always for watching and listening. Have a wonderful Tuesday, and we'll see you guys tomorrow. Take care.